We're glad you're here. Welcome to the program and thank you for giving us your time. I'm Felicity Ezewike. On June 18, what became deadly protests erupted in Kenya. Thousands of young people took to the streets to demand economic reforms, an end to corruption and better governance. The protests, largely organized on social media, were met with police brutality, resulting in injuries and fatalities. Analysts say several economic factors merged to create the perfect storm for the mass protests. From the hard economic times brought on by COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine to complaints over rising national debt and the cost of living. Considering that the bulk of the country's population, 80%, are below 35, patience was already running thin. Highly educated Gen Zs, contrasting their lives with those of political leaders who flaunt their wealth, grew angrier. A notable mention of yet another source of anger is the widespread belief that the IMF and World Bank are calling the shots in Kenya. The tipper, however, was the Financial Bill 2024, which has now been withdrawn. Following the protests, President Ruto announced significant austerity measures. He eliminated budget provisions for the first and second ladies' office. He cut government renovation budgets by 50%, dissolved 47 state corporations, halted the hiring of chief administrative secretaries, and mandated the retirement of civil servants aged 60 and above. These steps aimed to address Kenya's high public debt, which stood at 68% of GDP. Yet, even with these measures, and despite the protests, the reality and warning from economists is that the Kenyan government is working a tightrope with international debt obligations amounting to nearly $80 billion. Let's get some perspective of recent events and suggestions for moving forward. On today's program, security and leadership analyst Africa, Enoch Makanga. He joins us from Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much from Nigeria.
All right. I mentioned some of the issues that drove the protest in my introduction, but what is your perception of events that led to this crisis? And importantly, maybe you could start from that. Tell us about the current temperature in the capital city.
Okay, the situation has not improved because of the following reasons. Number one, the new government that came on board, they came in with a lot of promises. One of them being that they would be able to assist the poor people coming from the poverty line to another level, and that has not worked. And when the Gen Zs now came up with these online complaints of the things that they thought were not working, the government didn't take it very seriously. They thought these are young guys on social media, they'll not be able to do anything. So unfortunately, I think these guys were properly organized in terms of ticket organization, in terms of masses organization, and they took Nairobi's streets by storm, and they were able to get even into the parliament without proper preparation by the police. Police were got in flat-footed, and so this made the government to, first of all, react. They reacted very hard, saying that these were criminals, but after some consultations, they were able to learn that their high-handedness could not help the government. In fact, it was making things worse. So the president had to come down and say that he's able to discuss with the youth and engage Kenyans to be able to see where the problem is. So as we are speaking right now, a good number of measures have been put in place. Unfortunately, some of the things that have been put in place, people are not happy. One of them being they want President Ruto to fire some of the ministers that have been adversely mentioned in corruption. Some of the offices that I think they are consuming money, like the first lady's office, second lady's office, and basically taking action on those who've been involved in serious corruption issues. So these are some of the issues that the youth are really making noise. And then finally, like of yesterday, they were complaining that, most of the people who are in the Ruto's government are old people who are over 60 years. So they're asking why should they be that much? These guys should move out and be able to give chance to the young guys who can go take care of the job. So as we are speaking right now, that is the position. We can say some of the demands were met, but some of them have not been met. Like they are saying that the president should be able to resign, which is not possible. There's a mandate, a law that is required for a president to resign or to move out. And that will become a tall order until the time when the president is going out in 2027.
Yeah, we will, if we have enough time, explore the request for the president to resign. I mean, what would that really accomplish at this time? A lot of analysts have argued. But I want us to start with looking at the debt obligation. Kenya has obligations, international debt obligations amounting to nearly $80 billion. Fulfilling them without the extra tax revenue that the bill that has now been rejected hopes to bring is a setback, according to economists who warn that the Kenyan government is walking a tightrope. What is your assessment of the measures taken so far by the government since the protests?
You see, the problem that Kenyans are having is that the money collected through taxes is not being used in the right way. And like the president going for 68 trips internationally, and when he moves like that, he moves with a whole contingent of more than 300 people. So what Kenyans are wondering, why should the president go to very many international trips with a very big contingent of people, and that money can be used for other things? So what Kenyans are saying, the president can be able to put in place better measures that can be able to be used so that this debt is paid. But now you are talking here, we have a debt, and here you are overspending. Here we have corrupt ministers. Here you've got scandals involving your friends.
These issues are quite clear, like you've enumerated, and I've highlighted some of them in my introduction. But what I'm trying to find out from you is, since the protest is on hold, not that it has been called off, right?
The protest is not on hold. These guys, they are working online, and like today, they were reported some riots here and there, but it's not spontaneous the way it was.
Okay, so I just wanted to confirm that, and then ask you the question that I really asked about the efforts by the government so far in addressing some of the issues that were raised. I want you to assess them. Are they meeting up to expectations, or is there still a long wedge between them and the people?
There are so many ways Kenya government can be able to put in place ways of collecting revenue and making sure that that debt is paid. One of them is, for example, having unnecessary offices that are not constitutional. Like the office of the cabinet prime minister is not a constitutional office. So why is that office consuming a lot of money for nothing? So these are some of the issues that Kenyans are saying. We've got offices that are not constitutional. There are things that the government is doing that don't add up. We would rather pay those debts by using that money that we are having offices that are constitutional. And then number two, we have a problem of what the president is alleging to have gotten from outside. For example, let's say he has gotten aid from outside. People are not seeing that aid. They are only talking about, I was in China, I was in Belgium. People want to see. You went to China, you brought roads. You went to China, you brought this. These are things that people want to see. And that's now where the problem is. People are feeling cheated. People are feeling that, yes, the president is saying that he's going to put in place all these things, but wait a minute. Why can't you why can't you reduce the budget of the current budget we are using as a government so that some of those unimportant issues, some of those unimportant meetings can be removed so that that money is used to pay the debt? And that's now where the problem is.
Okay, I'm still staying with the debt profile of the country because, I mean, the bill itself was a direct response to efforts to pay up that debt. And one of the accusations in the course of this protest was that the IMF and the World Bank are calling the shots in Kenya and undermining its sovereignty and independence, making economic decisions for the country. What is your thinking about this?
Wrong timing, wrong timing. You may have a very good idea, but wrong timing. It's wrong for Kenya to come up with such a decision at such a time when the economy is doing very bad. People are really feeling painful. It's very expensive. And that's why Kenyans went in the streets, because now they are feeling, petrol is very expensive, life is very expensive. The normal member public can make a meal in a day, and then you are talking about bring another bill. And that's now where the problem came in, and people felt very painful. They said, no way, we would rather you reduce the budget of the government and be able to meet that debt obligation, as opposed to making that we as members of the public, we are able to add to help the government pay that debt. And that's the problem that we're having currently. People are feeling that there are things that can be done so that the government can use that money to be able to pay the debt that is outstanding.
There are suggestions that the country should harness this new spirit that has come off the protest and maybe organize a national conversation to usher in a new Kenya. Hopefully, the belief is that it will fix the politics of the land, and maybe that will have economic benefits. What does history tell us about the prospect of such dialogue in Kenya?
Those dialogues have never worked. In Kenya, those dialogues have never worked. Because number one, the government spends so much money on the talks. People meet in five-star hotels. They have very good meals. They sleep very well. And at the end of the day, those task forces, the reports will just end up lying somewhere and with no implementation. For example, now we've ministry that deals with debt. They are able to analyze the debts that Kenya has. They are able, it's known as the Auditor General's Office. That office has got a whole number of staff that are employed and paid by the taxpayers' money. So people are saying, why make a tax force when we have a whole Auditor General's Office that can be used to do that job? There's no way of duplicating work. And that's why Kenyans are saying, I don't think the president has any right to be able to make another commission or a group that will be able to discuss issues. For example, people know very well that they will not add up any value to this discussion. People will just waste money eating in hotels, sleeping in hotels, but at the end of the day, it won't help Kenyans.
Okay, let's go back to the call for the president's resignation. The question I asked earlier was, what would that achieve? Is a change of guard pertinent at this juncture for Kenya?
It is not possible for Kenya for the president to resign. Not possible. Not possible at all. Number one, the Kenya constitution demands that if a president has to be moved out, the step number one is the members of parliament have to go to parliament and they have to do a vote of no confidence, and then there must be at least 2/3. This is not possible. It's not achievable in Kenya because the same president is the one who is able to buy the members of parliament, and they will vote him in. So the only available option for Kenyans is to wait for the ballot 2027. But using shortcuts cannot be able to work in Kenya because at the end of the day, we are a democratic country, and removing the president undemocratically in Kenya is not possible. It cannot be able to work.
So why do you think the protesters are asking for his resignation when they know realistically it can't be done at the moment?
It's the anger. People have got anger. The anger they have on what they've gone through in terms of life being very expensive. The promises they were promised that life will change. The promises that they were told that it's bottom-up economy. People at the bottom are the ones who will have money. People on top are the ones who will not have money. And then they realize that This is not realistic. It cannot be able to work. People have got money in Kenya are the guys, the big boys, the guys who are near the president. They are the guys who are flashing money over the weekends in fundraisings. And these are issues that are really hurting Kenyans because they see the president has appointed people of this clan, this tribe, almost like around 90% in all leading parastatals, in leading organizations. That has been a problem. It has been on social media. They've seen the problem of him appointing his friends, political friends. So people are wondering now, does it mean that when you win an election, it's only your friends and your relatives that can be able to get in? And some of the issues that are making Kenyans feel very painful. I'm hoping that the president will be able to change his heart. We've seen him coming down, trying to say that he won't spare anybody who is trying to be involved in corruption. But we are just hoping that he will turn this to be a reality so that we see action being taken. So far, the minister was involved with the issue of fertilizer has not been fired. The people who have been involved in scandals, people know them. It has been in public limelight. We will not see an action being taken. And that's what Kenyans are waiting for. They really want to see that the president is able to strike and be able to get these guys. And then what they are really crying for right now is appointing a new cabinet that has first of Kenya involving the Kenyans, and at the end of the day, everybody being involved in the decision making.
All right, a new cabinet, you say, would be one way. Families have lost loved ones in the course of these protests. How can we ensure that it leads to meaningful reforms and not just cosmetic changes, like something as tangible as this appointment of a new cabinet that you suggest?
A lot of things need to be done. For example, now the youth who died, they were being claimed to be criminals. We proved beyond doubt, as a security expert, I know very well, there were no criminals. These were just youth who were anchored, who had temper, and they were able to release their pressure, and the police were to shoot them. So the first step is the police, the government getting into action, assisting the families that have been affected, because, we are talking about young guys, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, people at a bright future. So these are guys that we are saying the government needs to help them in terms of meeting their expenses and maybe compensating the families. Number two, dealing with these guys who have been heavily mentioned with corruption, which is public. People know that these guys have been involved in corruption. Number three, making sure that he makes a new cabinet that reflects the country in terms of making sure that everybody is represented. Number three, firing all these guys from the national organizations. Some of those national organizations are not profit-making, they are loss-making, they are just an injury to Kenyan taxpayers' money. They should be closed down and the new ones be appointed. But those ones who are being appointed should be people who are competent. The problem we've had is that he appoints people who go to lead government organizations and they are not competent. And at the end of the day, you find that as a government, we are not making any money. The government is not making any money. And that has been a problem that Kenyans feel they are being cheated.
Okay, one of the concerns, it's primarily from the young people who are driving this protest, is that the country has failed to create adequate opportunities for the educated ones to make a change. How can political leaders in Kenya begin to address this, ensuring that young people who are educated and ready to work have this?
There are so many ways of creating jobs. Number one is the government has very strict rules that the investors are moving from Kenya. They are going to Uganda, they are going to Tanzania, they are going to other countries, they are going to Rwanda. So the first thing is they lessen the restriction rules of people investing in Kenya, so that Kenya has got more investors. That one already will create employment, number one. Number two, there are a lot of youth who are supposed to join government institutions. Unfortunately, we've got people who are more than 60 years still working with the government, 65 years still working with the government. So what we are saying is that let the government do away with these guys who are more than 60 years, 55 years, let's have the young guys be able to be given opportunity to be able to join the government. Number three, we have organizations like you said, World Vision, that operate within the continent, and they do relief to very many organizations within the region. Why can they be given opportunity to be able to create opportunities? The problem we've had is that we are creating a lot of unnecessary rules, a lot of restrictions that international organizations are not able to camp in Kenya, and these organizations have been able to go to other countries. And that's why you find youth, there are so many youth with very many degrees, they graduate every year, more than 10,000 every year. But the problem is they are graduating and they have no jobs. They are graduating and they have no jobs. People who are seriously educated, and that's now where the government has made serious blunders. They need to come up with ways of how these youth will be engaged. If not, the youths have taken up the war. The war is so serious, and I think they've taken everybody by storm. The big people like my age, you are saying, you guys, you've done a good job. You are crying for us. And keep on fighting. Let's keep on going.
I'm told we have less than 4 minutes to wrap up this conversation, but I still have a lot of questions. I'll just run it down to two. One other issue is corruption. You've talked a lot about the need for reform. How can government show commitment to actually tackling corruption?
Corruption, there is no shortcut. Anybody being found in corruption should be able to face the law. And that's where the problem is, because like the guy who sold fertilizer, fake fertilizer to people, that guy is supposed to be behind bars. But as we are talking right now, that guy, the minister who was involved in selling fake fertilizer, nothing has been done. So the bottom line is anybody who is involved in corruption should be dealt with accordingly and should be sent packing.
All right, this one for the road. What are the implications of these protests for Kenya's political and economic future? What should we get from all of this?
The government must try as much as possible to make sure these riots are eliminated, because tourists don't want to go to a country where the government needs to, first of all, create employment for these youth. They need to make sure that they create good opportunities for investors to come and invest in Kenya. People want to build hotels, people want to build factories, and finally, they need to listen. This issue of just stamping politically, you know, I'm the president, there's nothing you will do. That won't work out because it has been overtaken by events, and these youths are really driving the point, and they have the numbers. They will vote this government out, I can assure you.
Enoch, thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you so much for having me, and looking forward to talking to you again.
I look forward to that too. I'm quite glad I was able to say thank you to him for sharing his time with us.